The story of Elena and me. I used to think love was something that happened to other people. The kind of people who had lives that unfolded like the pages of a novel. Perfectly timed glances, fateful coincidences, happy endings written before the first chapter even began. I didn't believe in that. Not really. And then I met Elena. It wasn't in a dramatic way. There was no thunderstorm, no life or death situation, no cinematic background music swelling as our eyes met. No, it was simpler than that. I saw her in a bookstore cafe on an ordinary September evening. She was sitting by the window, her hair catching the golden light, a paperback in her hands. She looked so completely absorbed, so herself, that for a moment I forgot where I was. A friend introduced us, almost by accident. I was shy, clumsy with my words. She smiled politely, said her name, Elena, in a voice that was steady, unhurried. It was such an ordinary moment, and yet I carried it with me for days afterward, like a secret I didn't want to let go of. What followed wasn't a whirlwind. It was slower, more fragile, like the way autumn leaves fall, one by one, quietly, until suddenly the whole world looks different and you can't quite remember when it changed. We kept crossing paths. At a friend's dinner party. At the weekend market, her arms full of flowers. Once on a tram where she tapped my shoulder in surprise and laughed, saying, "You again." Each time we met, the distance between us shrank, not in leaps but in inches. The night I really got to know her was on a balcony at a birthday party. The city lights stretched out below us, and the air was cold enough that we both pulled our jackets tighter. She asked me suddenly, "Do you think you're a happy person?" I didn't know how to answer. Happiness had never been a permanent state for me, more like something that flickered in and out. After a moment I said, "Sometimes. Not always. I guess I'm still figuring it out." She nodded, her gaze fixed on the city. "Same," she whispered. That conversation opened a door. We talked until the sky began to pale with the first signs of morning. She told me about her childhood, her family, the way she once believed love could save you but wasn't so sure anymore. I told her about my own fears, the parts of myself I usually kept hidden. It was terrifying, and yet with her it felt safe. When the party ended, I walked her to her bus stop. The air was biting, and without thinking, I gave her my scarf. Our fingers brushed, and it was nothing, and it was everything. That was how it began. The weeks that followed were a blur of late-night conversations, endless walks through streets that suddenly felt alive, coffees that stretched into hours. We weren't officially anything yet, but every glance, every accidental touch carried a weight I couldn't ignore. One evening after a movie, we lingered outside in the cool air. She was laughing at something I said, her breath visible in the night, when suddenly she grew quiet. Her eyes met mine, and in that moment the world seemed to hush. I kissed her, gently, uncertainly, as though the whole thing might shatter if I moved too fast. She kissed me back. I remember walking home that night in a daze, unable to stop smiling. I was no longer someone who doubted love. I was in it, completely. But love isn't a straight line. It never is. The first cracks appeared in ways so small I almost ignored them. My job demanded long hours. She was finishing her studies, balancing 1,000 commitments. We began missing each other, physically, emotionally. There were evenings when she would call and I'd be too exhausted to really listen, or mornings when I'd sense her pulling away, though she never said it out loud. Our first real fight happened on a rainy night. She accused me of being distant, of caring more about work than about us. I shot back that she didn't understand the pressure I was under. The words were sharp, ugly, the kind that linger long after the echo fades. She left that night without saying goodbye. We didn't speak for weeks. I told myself it was over, that maybe it had just been a beautiful but temporary chapter. But the truth was, I missed her in a way that gnawed at me constantly. Every street corner, every cafe, every quiet evening reminded me of her. When we finally saw each other again, at yet another friends' gathering, as if fate refused to let us drift apart completely, the air between us was heavy with everything unsaid. I wanted to apologize, to explain, but I didn't know how. She gave me a small, tired smile, one that said she was hurt but not closed off entirely. That night, after everyone else had left, we found ourselves alone in the kitchen. She looked at me and whispered, "I don't want to lose this. I don't want to lose us." I didn't realize until then how much I had been holding my breath for those words. I promised her I'd try harder, be present, fight for what we had. And for a while I did. The next year was both the happiest and hardest of my life. We traveled together, saved money for cheap trips, got lost in unfamiliar cities, laughed until our stomachs hurt. We learned each other's habits, both the endearing and the infuriating ones. She hated mornings, loved leaving half-read books scattered everywhere. I snored, talked in my sleep, forgot to put the cap back on the toothpaste. We drove each other crazy, but we also fit together in a way that felt undeniable. There were nights lying on the floor of her tiny apartment, listening to old records when I thought, this is it. This is what love really is. But real life doesn't pause for love. Jobs change. Families demand attention. Dreams pull in different directions. She wanted to move abroad for a master's program. I had just been offered a promotion that would keep me in the city. We told ourselves we could handle the distance. We wanted to believe that love was enough. For a while it was. We wrote long emails, stayed up late on video calls, counted the days until the next visit. But slowly, inevitably, the distance carved its space between us. Time zones turned into missed calls. Texts grew shorter, less frequent. The warmth that once filled every conversation began to thin. The night she told me she was staying abroad permanently, I felt something inside me sink. She cried when she said it, apologizing, saying she still loved me but couldn't give up her dreams. I told her I understood. I even smiled, tried to be strong. But when the call ended, I sat in the dark and felt the weight of it crush me. We drifted apart after that. Not with a bang, not with anger, but with silence. A slow unraveling. Years passed. I dated other people. She did too, I'm sure. Life went on as it always does. I built a career, made friends, learned how to live without her. But every so often, she would slip into my mind. The smell of her hair, the way she tucked a strand behind her ear, the sound of her laugh in the cold night air. I thought I had closed that chapter for good. Until one day I saw her again. It was at the same bookstore cafe where we had first met. I was there on a Saturday morning sipping coffee when I looked up and there she was standing by the shelves flipping through a book. My heart stopped. She looked different, older, more composed, a little more serious. But when she turned and our eyes met, the years melted away. She smiled, hesitant but warm, and walked over. "Hey," she said softly. We talked for hours that day. About where life had taken us, about everything we had missed. There was no bitterness, no anger. Just two people who had once loved each other deeply, acknowledging the weight of it, and the fact that it never really goes away. We didn't get back together. That's not the ending of this story. But as we hugged goodbye, she whispered, "I'm glad we had what we had. It made me who I am." And I realized she was right. Love doesn't always save you. It doesn't always last forever. But it changes you, shapes you, leaves its mark in ways you can't undo. Elena was my beginning, my middle, and though not my forever, she will always be part